Hi there, this is Gary Dranow from Park City, Utah. Welcome to the Gary Dranow Show, coming to you from YouTube and radio stations across the nation. Come hang out with me and my guests while we talk about music, life, and reality. Hey everybody, this is Gary Dranow, the Gary Dranow Show, and today we have a very, very special guest, Britt Bacon, who I had the honor of being in a band with in the late 1970s, and we'll be talking about that a little bit. But Britt has lived a very busy life. What happens when a songwriter who almost got a record deal becomes one of Hollywood's secret sonic architects. So, Britt, welcome to the Gary Dranow Show.
Hi, Gary.
It's only been 4 or 5 years, right, Britt?
Yeah, not too long.
Let's start with your earliest music memories.
Well, my parents were, very much involved, or that they enjoyed playing folk music, and my mom learned guitar, and my dad learned banjo, and so they started getting involved with some bluegrass people. And my father we lived not too far from a high school, and so every so often, this is in the valley growing up, my dad would put out a sign in the shape of a guitar that said "Hootenanny tonight."
Hootenanny tonight.
Hootenanny tonight, and people would just show up. And my earliest memories, and these parties would go on for 2, sometimes 3 days. And I remember walking around the house, and in one corner there'd be a little bluegrass group playing something, and in another corner there'd be some folk music people doing some folk music. And
this was in your house where was that, Chatsworth?
This was in Granada Hills.
Granada Hills, yeah.
Yeah, and this is I don't think you ever saw that house. That was
that's not the house Spoiled Brat studio was in?
No, that was before that. Yeah. And so it was very, I grew up, just naturally, singing along, and then I learned ukulele when I was like 2 years old, and then
really?
My parents bought me a 3/4 size Gibson acoustic, and I started, learning how to play that. And at one point, my sister and I had a little band together where she played tambourine and she sang harmonies, and I played guitar, and we played Beatles songs, and it was just kind of natural. It wasn't anything like we were trying to do anything but just enjoyed music. It was kind of part of our lives. So
yeah. And where did you play music at all in elementary school, junior high school? Did you perform any events during that period?
Well, we had at a certain point, we actually did have a family band. What
was the name of the family band?
I think it was just the Bacon family, and we had my dad was a songwriter, and my mom wrote songs, and I wrote songs, and so we would kind of pick from the repertoire, and we had we got a couple sets of music together, and then my dad was in the television industry, and he knew some people, so he set up this event at our house, to like an audition, and probably, I want to say, maybe 25, 30 people were there. One of the people that was there was Bobby Sherman. I do remember that. And we did our little audition. And then, I don't know, a couple days later, my dad said, well, we got offered a gig to go to be a house band in Las Vegas.
What?
And so it was like,
When
oh,
was this?
this would have been 1972 or so, maybe. And 72, 73 maybe. And, uh, as I've mentioned before, I mentioned in my blog that I'm thankful that my
Let's get
dad.
your blog out right now. 45 at 55, right?
Yeah. It's 45 at AT 55. It's kind of complicated at Blogspot.
Blogspot.com.
Yeah, but I'm thankful that my dad turned the gig down. I mean, he had a steady job, and he kind of felt like he didn't want to and throw that all away just to do this Vegas thing. And I have to say, had I grown up in Vegas in the '70s, I would be dead by now, I'm sure. So
Why is that?
well, I mean, hey, Vegas is nothing against Vegas, but there's lots of stuff going on there, and especially back then, it was, I imagine, fairly sordid.
Uh-huh.
And I just,
Drugs.
yeah, just everything. I think I would have been, uh, I'm sure I would have been led astray, on my own volition. So, but and then yeah, like just before that, my sister and I auditioned for the Steve Allen show,
Really?
and and we went to the audition, and I remember that because Peter Noon of the Herman's Hermits was there in the audience, and we did our audition, and then we got a call a couple days later saying, "Hey, we got it. We're going to be on." And it was like, "Oh, great!" Very excited. It was like, I mean, and then we got a call. I don't know, a couple days before the show, we were supposed to come in for the taping, and they said that the show got canceled. Steve Allen's show got canceled.
Ah,
So,
bummer.
so once again, it's like, I don't know. I mean, everything happens for a reason, and so I don't, you know, it's okay. It's all right. I'm fine with that. Um, but yeah, no, I had a really in terms of musical upbringing. My dad had a little Ampex 2-track, and our living room at the house in Granada Hills was actually originally it was a church, and so the living room was kind of big high ceilings and wood,
Cavernous, huh?
and yeah, and a really great place to record. And so my dad would set up a couple mics and record all sorts of stuff, and so that was kind of the beginnings of me being exposed to recording and all that kind of stuff.
Well, when I met you, where was that house?
That was in Porter Ranch. Yeah,
And
they sold the house in Granada Hills in 75, 76 ish, I guess, and then
well,
moved to
that's
Porter
right
Ranch.
around the time when you recorded my first four songs. Had to
Right. Yeah.
be
Yeah. Well, what
75,
happened was,
76, I would think.
yeah, because I graduated in '75, and then I went to UCLA, and because that's what you did. You just went to college,
Right.
and
Except for me, I went ski racing.
well, yeah. Well, some of us are smarter, meaning you. but but I realized towards the end of my first year that this isn't like, I didn't really, this was, my heart wasn't in it. What I really wanted to do was be a songwriter and
A
write.
producer?
Yeah. Well, not, that wasn't really on my, uh, it wasn't within my scope at the time. I just was more interested in being an artist and, writing songs and doing that whole thing. So I told my parents, I said, okay, well, I'm going to try to get a record deal this summer. And if I get a record deal, then I'm not coming back to college. And so I spent the summer recording. By that point, my dad had like a 4-track recorder, and so I spent the summer recording some songs and some demos, and then I made copies and went around to the record companies and said hi, and gave them, you
I,
know,
I, I never knew all this. I
yeah,
should have known this, but this
yeah,
is news to me.
yeah, and then of course, but I didn't have a record deal by the end of the summer, so I of course, started, thinking, well, what am I going to do now? And I had a job at Warehouse Records, just as a way to make a little money, and my dad was, in his with his infinite wisdom, said, well, I've got this money that I put aside for your college. Maybe we could, start a little studio in the garage. And I'm like, oh, okay, great. And this was right around the time when there was a big revolution in recording equipment, where it became a lot cheaper than it had ever been. And so I had a TIAC eight
I
track.
was just going to say, I remember your TIAC recorder
Yeah,
very
yeah,
well.
and that was was a really revolutionary thing, and it had DBX noise reduction, and it was a great little machine. I think all in, I think it was probably, with all the equipment, it was around $3,000, which at the time was,
For the entire studio,
yeah, yeah, for the entire studio.
wow.
And I mean, that's, back then that was, a bit of money, but still, compared to the traditional recording studios, where a tape machine could cost that much, or it was a big deal. And so, anyways, I put I put an ad in the recycler, which, I don't know, it was a local
Yeah, I know it
classified
well.
ad, you know, thing, and I decided to call the studio Spoil Brat, and
Which,
I
by the way, let's put a pin in it right there. Um, you know what the name of my first apparel company was?
I don't remember.
Spoiled
No.
Brats of California.
Oh, wow, huh? Interesting.
Yeah, and that happened right about the time. Well, let's kind of fast forward for a minute to 1979 when you, me, Fred Rayfeld, Sean Weingarten. What was Sean's name?
Yeah, that's right. Yes, that's right. Sounds Sean. I don't remember Sean, and Sean Weingarten sounds right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we went into a drainage ditch, painted the name of our band on the ceiling of this big, huge drainage thing. And I, what was the film guy's name?
Oh,
It's eluding
Sam.
me.
Yeah, Sam Cheroff.
Sam Cheroff, exactly right. So he was doing a project for his master thesis or something like that at the University of Northridge. So he shot our entire music video. I believe it was on 16 millimeter tape.
Yes, that's correct. Um, yeah, I mean, we were way ahead of the curve. I mean, well, I mean, by that point, you and I
And
had
by the
been,
way, I know when that was. That was 1979. We did that.
uh-huh.
So I first met you at Spoiled Brat Studio. It must have been 77 or 78.
That sounds about right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
How did
And
I get to you, Britt?
I have no idea. Maybe
The
you saw the ad
recycler?
in the recycler. Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
Probably.
yeah. And and you came in. You recorded I think, four songs.
Four
Uh,
songs. Yep,
and
they're
it was
gone. Lost them forever. But
yeah, but I mean, it was like, well, this guy's really good, and the original
who are you talking
songs.
about?
Yeah, no, it was impressive. I mean, you had great great playing abilities, and your voice, and there was a vibe, and so yeah, no, it was good. So
Yeah. I think a year or so went by, and I kept coming to your studio, and we decided to form a band.
yeah, it kind of happened, and what was we were, I think, in many ways ahead of our time. I mean, it
Well,
was,
just for context, MTV wasn't even happening yet.
yeah,
Not for 4 years.
right, right, and we had developed this kind of concept album, you know, uh,
Lonely World, Lonely Planet.
right, yeah, and where and we kind of envisioned ourselves as kind of aliens in terms of I mean, it's
And
multi.
by the way, I had my second apparel company at that time, and my designer made us outfits that were really pretty cool, and we all were wearing the same outfit.
Yeah, yeah. We were. I mean, actually I kept that my outfit for many years and wore it to numerous things, gigs. I think
Seriously.
with some gigs in it and other events. So, but yeah, no, we were really. It was uh, you know some really great songs and I still things that I still remember to this day. Um, uh, yeah. So go on.
Well, so we um, found a keyboard player, and I don't know where we found him from.
Well, that Fred actually came from he was a client of the studio as well, and it could have very well have been that you showed up one day when Fred was finishing recording, doing some recording, and you guys started talking or something happened, and Fred was really great piano player and really great voice, and
But completely insane.
very well. He was definitely on the edge, yeah, and
Yep,
and
he was
yeah,
living life fast and loose.
yes, he was, and he. But I mean, I have to say, the songs that he recorded and the stuff that he did at my little studio back then, I thought, well, this guy's got a lot of talent. He's gonna go far.
Well, and he was into prog rock.
Prog rock, and also, yeah, I mean, like almost, I would say like borderline kind of show tuney type stuff and stuff. But yeah, really, real interesting guy, and um, so yeah.
And it was a fateful day that we asked him to join the band. Little did we know the havoc he would wreak upon us. Because if we had a different personality on keyboards or no keyboards at all, um, I think we would have had a pretty good shot. Because everybody, look up the video "New Invaders Anthem" on YouTube, and there is the original video shot by Sam Cheroff, um, and he did all the editing. Did you do any of the sound mixing on that, Britt?
Well, actually, what happened was, uh, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8, 9 years ago, whatever it was. I was over at Sam's house, and he had a box, and he goes, "Hey, do you want this stuff?" I'm like, "What's that?" He goes, "Oh, that's the new Invaders stuff." And I'm like, "Oh," because what happened was he never actually got to finish
Oh,
editing the film.
really? I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
yeah, he had, it got to the end, and he was actually in his senior year, and he graduated, so he just whatever, just kind of put it aside. And so I said, "Yeah, I'll take it." And so I took the film and what audio that we had, and I went and had it transferred to digital, and then I assembled it. And it was tough because there was no guide track on the film.
Right.
I mean, I had to like just look at lip sync and kind of try to remember what was happening and stuff. And I edited it together. Unfortunately, the only sound we had was from a mag strip, which was like the early film way that they used to record sound, and it
Was
was
it
just
mono?
and it was in mono, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's pretty, it's not very good sounding, but um, yeah. So I assembled that, and then I posted the video on YouTube, just as you do, and I think we got in touch after that, and just to let you know that it's there, for all time.
Yeah, and it's been up for 17 years, and it's had 151,000 views. So
Oh wow, I didn't know that. That's good.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
Well, it's
we
not
did.
monetized, so please
Yeah,
enjoy it without commercials.
what? Yeah, that's another story. Um, so let's see here. After you and I were torn asunder by Fred's evil ways, um, well, first of all, Fred, may he rest in peace, died not too long after we shot that video because I believe he was a junkie.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what when he passed, but I mean, it's sad. Like I said, he was very talented, and but he had his demons, as I guess we all kind of do in a certain sense, right?
Not at the Fred Rayfield level. I mean, fortunately for you and me,
Right.
no.
Well, no, yeah. Well, hopefully not. Yeah.
So, what did music feel like in the late 60s and early 70s for you? What were your, I mean, you mentioned the Beatles already. Um, Herman Hermits, you mentioned, and maybe that's just because you met the guy. But what were the groups that were your biggest influences uh, back in the 60s and 70s?
Well, one of the interesting phenomenon, at least for me growing up, was we didn't have a TV. Even though my dad was in the television business, we didn't have a television until I think I was maybe 8 years, or well, actually, no, it was when Kennedy was assassinated. So I was, maybe 5 years old.
60, that was
But
61, wasn't it?
yeah, 63, or I think it was 63. But um, I never knew, my dad finally brought home a little small black and white TV, but my parents just watched the news on it. So I didn't
Hmm.
know there was anything else on TV. I just thought, oh, it's just news, and I didn't really care about it. And uh, and it wasn't until a couple years later that I was over at a friend's house, and he turned on the TV and he switched over to I think it was Winchell Mahoney time, and there were like cartoons and stuff, and I'm like, wow, how do you do that? And he goes, you just turn the knob to this channel, and I was like, I gotta go, and I ran home and I turned on the TV and oh my god, so but the point is that I grew up listening to listening to music all the time. I mean, I remember like sitting on the floor next to the speaker on the floor and just listening and imagining what imagining the people inside the speaker making the music, and so I was exposed to a lot of different types of music. Um, uh, I mean, in terms of, I think the core for me is always like songwriting. Uh, I was always really mostly interested in the songs because
So, what did you start out with? Lyrics first, music first? What was your process?
um, it's never necessarily one way or the other. I mean, I think that uh, sometimes it can be like, oh, you get an idea just for a title for a song, and that sparks a whole idea.
Hmm.
Or the other side is that you come up with some kind of little lick, and you go, oh, that's cool, and that inspires something else. Um, uh, but one of my early mentors, Gary Tigerman, who taught me to play Beatles songs when I was 6 years old or whatever, 7 years old. He was a and still is a great songwriter. And he really inspired me because he actually went on to have a career as a real, songwriter. and and the way that he wrote songs, it was not just like love songs. It was more like almost like little mini movies,
Vignettes.
and that that told a story, and you felt a flow, and you could picture the what was happening in your mind, and so I always leaned more towards songwriting than necessarily technical prowess, in terms of playing the players and stuff like that. I appreciated, the players, but what always appealed to me is just the song. It's like, what's the song? And then like in terms of influences of, I mean, gosh, we had so many, so many albums and stuff. It's hard to really pick out. I mean, of course,
Well, if I had to nail you down, in the early 1970s, who was your favorite musician or band?
Oh, huh. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because I mean, that was one thing about the Beatles, that because they really were always kind of pushing the envelope,
They were
you know.
eclectic for sure.
Yeah, and how they kind of they really kept growing, and evolving, and not just putting out the same old stuff all the time.
Right.
But by the early '70s, and I mean, of course,
When did the Beatles do the White Album? When was that?
oh gosh, that was, yeah, well, I would say that might have been '68.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. But I mean, the '70s, back then, good old FM radio. I mean, there was KMET and KLOS.
KLOS, sound of the 80s.
Yeah, so we used to listen. I used to listen up. Of course, Zeppelin, and all. I mean, so that was kind of the time where you had so much stuff happening. I mean, I mean, look at Joni Mitchell, or Crosby, Stills and Nash, or I mean,
Laurel Canyon was a hotbed of musicians.
yeah, yeah. It was a lot of stuff going on then, and
All right, well, listen, we got to take our first 2-minute break. We've gone over because we got a lot to talk about, but we will be back in 2 minutes with Britt Bacon, the ultimate talent, who is Britt Bacon. Britt Bacon, my dear, dear old friend, who recorded my first four ever songs in his studio, Spoiled Brat Studio. And as we said a little bit earlier in the interview, around the same time, or actually quite a while before that, I had my first apparel company that was called Spoiled Brats of California. And the two are not related. But I think it's kind of kismet that we got together. And so after we recorded the video in 1979 because I remember the clappers and the date was on there. And Sam Sharoff did not finish the project, and you did years later, which was posted on YouTube 17 years ago. And my mind is boggled that it doesn't have 1 million views, but you never know what catches fire.
It's amazing that we were so ahead of our time, and I think once again, had we actually had it together enough that we actually finished the video and got it to MTV at the time,
we would have been something. We could have been a contender.
We could have been a contender, but once again, we probably would also be dead. So
yeah. So we cleaned up our lives. So let's talk about the introduction of Alan Morse into your sphere. Was Skyline Studios built before you met Alan Morse, or the other way around?
Oh, I knew Alan from high school.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we went to the same high school, and I remember somehow I got invited to some parties and stuff like that, and he would be playing there, and his brothers are also very talented musicians, and
we'll talk a little bit about Alan Morse. To me, he was one of the best guitar players I had ever seen at the time.
Yeah, well, I mean, he still is. he's amazing. Yeah, I mean, he has a very unusual style because he doesn't use a pick.
Right.
He uses his fingers. But he grew up. His father was a member of, gosh, the famous '60s group, and I'm not sure if it's I want to say the Four Tops, but it's not. I'm not sure. But he grew up in a very kind of a musical family as well, and so it's kind of in his DNA in terms of his understanding of music, and he just it's just there. And so when I was starting started building Skyline around the same time that we were doing our band, and I know my parents were concerned with well, you can't have a band and we're building the studio and can't do both at the same time. And I kept saying, well, what I want to do is I want to have, I've got this band, so we're going to have a bunch of songs so we can go in and record the songs at the new studio. And
breaks my heart that I never even saw the inside of that place.
Oh, when you first install all the equipment, you got to make sure everything's working. So it's what they call kind of like a burn-in time.
Burn-in, yeah.
And so that was the idea that I was aiming for. But the band dissolved before we could do that. And so then I was, facing, I don't know, maybe there were 6 months before the studio was going to be up and running. And so one of the clients, once again, of Skyline, Damon Lee, he was a lyricist, become friends with with me and with the family and stuff, and so he I think he got wind that I was available again, so to speak. And he said, "Well, I've got some lyrics for some songs, and so I'll take a look at them and started writing songs with his lyrics. And Damon is a really brilliant lyricist, and it was really, really inspiring. And I think it was good to kind of help me to, take my mind off of, the dissolution of the new Invaders and stuff. And so, uh, by the time Skyline was ready to open and ready to do like a burn-in session, I started looking around, and that's how I called Alan and said, "Hey, you want to help do this thing?" And kind of put the word out there. And in the meantime, Teddy Zambetti, who uh, I believe at the time he lived in, because the studio was in Topanga Canyon,
Hmm.
and so Teddy, I think, was living in Topanga at the time, and I met him through, so it's kind of all this things kind of came together, and so I had a little band, and we did a couple rehearsals, and then we went into the studio. The interesting story with that was, so one of the other clients that I worked with, and one of my other mentors, was a guy named Chad Stewart, and Chad was part of the '60s band Chad and Jeremy. And so when Chad came to my studio, he at the time he had a company that was making music for commercials, and he he said to me, like, the first day or so that he was there, he says, the last album that we recorded that he did with Chad and Jeremy, they only had 3 tracks, to record on, and so he was like, oh my God, 8 tracks to work with. That's a lot, and Chad knew a lot of
Well,
recording.
Skyline had 8 tracks, or your TAC
No, no,
machine?
no. Skyline was 24 track,
24 track. And
eventually 48 track,
a Neve
but
console, or what did he have in there?
of the last console we had was a Neve console. Uh-huh. Yeah. And but anyways, so I asked Chad, when I was getting ready to do the burn-in time at Skyline, if he would want to produce or help direct the session, because it was kind of in over my head really at that point. And so he recommended uh, a engineer producer guy who I probably shouldn't name. Um,
Okay, then don't.
uh, but and who had some very stellar credits, and was quite uh, you know esteemed, and was like, oh wow, he worked with that person. Okay. So that guy came out to the studio. I met him and said, okay, great. So then we did our recording sessions, and it turned out that he was, let's just say he was having some personal issues at the time, and it 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 was tough. It was tough, and um, frustrating um, process. I mean, what finally happened was, because so we recorded the basic tracks with him and some overdubs, and then I realized I didn't really want to be around this person anymore, so I kind of pushed him aside, and I ended up finishing the mixes on those songs myself. Um, but just another lesson, of
Life's
stuff.
full of lessons, huh, Britt?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Back then, music wasn't content, it was identity. You didn't just listen to a record, you lived inside it, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, that was really, uh, a lot of people's identities were wrapped up in what kind of music they listened to, and that kind of stuff. I know for myself, uh, even though I was a singer-songwriter and whatever, I I really appreciated all kinds of music. I mean, because I grew up with so many different kinds of music, and having the studio was really interesting because I was exposed to all sorts of stuff. I mean, I did I recorded, a couple albums with some, Iranian group that was like just wild. I mean, crazy time signatures and instruments and stuff. And I did.
Frisian mode.
Oh, it just it was like, what is this? Or some uh, you know um, Mexican bands and other different, Japanese. I worked with a bunch of bunch of Japanese albums, and all sorts of really different stuff, which is kind of how I still uh, listen to music or appreciate. I can appreciate pretty much anything. Um, but yeah.
Um, so uh, the analog tape workflow was different from the digital world. And, I remember when, I mean, this was years after you and I kind of drifted apart. I recorded my Destiny Robot album in 1995, which was recorded on a 24 track tape machine that was actually the tape machine that was in Jefferson Airplane's airplane.
Oh wow. Hmm.
And yeah, the guy's name who owned it was Markin Fedorovich. But I had a similar situation to what Sam did with the video that we shot, is that my life got thrown up in the air. So in 1998, I moved from Manhattan Beach, California to Park City, Utah, and I left my entire uh, album behind. I had a stroke, and I just kind of fell out of music. Years later, Jerry Manfredi, who was my bass player, sent me a 60-pound box, and in it were 7 Ampex tapes. And I had those sent to Deep Sound Studios. They baked the tapes and then turned them into digital stems. And the album was mixed and mastered for the first time in 2023.
Wow.
So that was decades that
Yeah.
was sitting out there, and that it actually came back to me. Um, Not that that has anything to do with you, Britt.
No, no, it's no, that's well, I mean, and the side note is that Ampex 456, the tape stock that was kind of the standard in the industry, um, became notorious for degrading
Mhm.
over the years. And so what would happen was it,
They
it
baked the tapes in my case.
you couldn't, if you just put up an old Ampex tape and tried to play it while it's going across the heads, the oxide from the tape would just would scrape off, and it
Mm.
would, so you could maybe play it once. So some people discovered that if they bake the tapes essentially at a low temperature for a certain amount of hours, that would keep the oxide stuck, just keep the stuff stuck to the tape long enough so you could actually transfer it properly.
Right.
So there's a whole industry of people that do that for a living now, trying to save Ampex tapes. I'm surprised there's not a class action lawsuit against Ampex for for the crappy oxide stuff that they have.
um, so you would do late night recording sessions. You had creative freedom. Uh, you did recording during off hours, right? At Skyline.
Yeah, well, it was interesting because I had a client once again back from Spoiled Brat, Richard Baskin, and he was really talented, singer songwriter guy, and Richard actually owned a professional studio in Hollywood. Um, uh, but he liked, when he would come to my studio to just do like demos of his songs, and and Richard and I became very close. And when I told him I was going to open, do Skyline, make this new studio, he said, "Don't do it, man. Don't do it. You'll never, you're going to end up in the studio. You're going to be doing everybody else's music, and you're not going to be able to do your own." And I was like, "Well, whatever. It's kind of too late now, And so I did. That's kind of, in retrospect, that is kind of what happened, because to the overhead to keep the studio running was such that we had to do a lot of sessions, to keep the whole thing chugging along, And so the only time that I had to work on my own music was on off hours, and it was tough. It was not easy to squeeze in, especially after doing a long day, of other people's music, then to sit back, come back, and then try to do my own music. It wasn't easy.
Right. I remember a song that you came out with, something about Afghanistan.
Yeah, that was from the Damon sessions. Those were from the Damon Lee sessions. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Now, was that Skyline or pre-Skyline?
That was one of the burn-in songs that we did at Skyline.
I loved it. It was great. It had
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the beginning of, or one of the chants, "The Wizard of Oz" or something.
yeah. We used the OEO chant from.
Oh, yo, yeah. Um, so Topanga Canyon was had a creative atmosphere, not completely distant from Laurel Canyon, right?
Yeah, no, no, yeah, definitely. There was, it's definitely songwriters that were. I think Neil Young had a place there, and just up the street from us when I was at Skyline, there was John Hellowell from Supertramp had a place, and he used to come down every so often and poke his head in. And yeah, there's a lot of, I'm sure there are lots of musicians still there today.
Oh, is Skyline still existing?
Skyline, so was closed Skyline in '91, and
So it had a good run.
yeah, yeah, we had like about 12 years run, and um, it a long story, but I had a partner, and by this point, my parents were not involved in the studio anymore, and I had a partner, and there was issues, and so
Those
and
damn issues.
yeah, and I think that I think in retrospect, it's really good, because I was kind of in a little bubble there. I didn't really go out into the world. I was just the world came to me, and I think it kept me a little bit too protected, and so in a way it was really good. It forced me to kind of come out of my shell, so to speak. Um, but it wasn't easy, because I first I started just going freelance as an engineer, producer, guy, whatever, and working for various artists, and the problem was that it took forever to get paid. When I
Oh
when I
yeah,
had this when I had the studio, um,
and
the lever-
overhead.
well, when I had the studio, the leverage that I had to get paid was that no, you don't get the tapes until I'm paid, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
and but when you're just a freelance engineer guy, you don't really have control of that. And so that leverage disappears, and then you're dealing with, a big record company, and they say, "Oh yeah, we'll pay you," and we're on a 90-day pay schedule, and you're like, "Well, that's great for you, but I'm on a, I'm on a 30-day, mortgage schedule. I got to pay,
Right,
so
right.
yeah, it became untenable for me to continue to do that. So that's how I kind of got, uh, kind of into post production.
We will be
Okay.
back in 2 minutes with Britt Bacon, the the ultimate talent, who is Britt Bacon.
And they tell you they control the weather, and they send out scalar waves. So you put this all together. Well, the moment they said hello, you said goodbye forever. It's simple, really. And you know all of that is in your head. All of that is in your head. It's all it'll ever be.
Hey, Britt. What, Teddy? Why don't you tell me a bedtime, nighttime story? Okay.
So she got home late last night, looking like she had a good time. And you don't want to start a fight, but your imagination's working overtime. And you pictured her having sex with the Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's history, really. And you know all of that is in your head. All of that is in your head. It's all it'll ever. Wash your face in the ice cold water.
Which brings us to 31 years at Paramount.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So let's talk about that, when that happened in your life. And
yeah. Well, I started, after I, kind of reluctantly decided to get into post-production. I started,
explain to my listeners what post-production is exactly.
well, so it's doing the sound for either television shows or for movies or for anything in the audio visual world. And so my father actually for some years had been saying, oh, you should start, you should get into post-production. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I want to make records. I didn't care about that stuff. I just want to make music. But at a certain point, it was like, well, okay, maybe I could get a steady paycheck, for a while. And so I got this gig at ABC in a division called Net Promo, which is basically the little, it's network promotion. So it was making the little commercials, touting the ABC programs, kind of stuff. Very, simple stuff. And it was interesting for me when I got there because it was so, they were really behind the times in terms of, in the music world, we had been using samplers and all this kind of equipment and stuff that, and MIDI and all this stuff that, for some years. And I got to ABC and they were still doing things like, I don't know do you know what a cart is?
No, it's a fish.
So they have these little like tapes, it was actually the same size as the old 8-track cartridges. And,
Okay.
And they would have on them like a sound effect, like there'd be like, say, a gunshot, right? And you push a start button and it would play the gunshot. And so when I got to ABC and in there and there's like, they're watching the screen and they're watching the guy with the gun. The guy's about to shoot the gun. The guy shoots the gun and one of the sound effects person is there watching the screen and pushes the start button to make the gunshot go.
What is
Right.
it? What is the name of the people that actually do like footsteps and doors closing?
That's called Foley.
Foley, that's right.
Yeah.
Is that still going on today?
Oh yeah. That's still still part of the process, especially with movies. But
If
a
people
lot of
only knew.
yeah. The big change was going from analog to digital. I mean, that was the big switch. The last couple of years of Skyline, I bought a Mac, a Mac 2CI, and at the time it was like the most advanced personal computer you could get. It was like $6,000. It had a 80 meg hard drive, and I think it had maybe 8 megs of RAM or
80
something.
megs.
Yeah, and 8 megs of RAM, and so I used that for my business, and then when I was at ABC, one day this box shows up, and there's a Macintosh in there, and there's this software called Pro Tools, and this was the very first version of Pro Tools, and everybody was like, I don't know what to do with this, and I said, well, I'll take a shot at it. I've got a computer, so I set it up and I installed Pro Tools, and at the time, Pro Tools was actually 2 programs. There was one program for recording and one for editing, and so you would kind of have to switch back and forth between the 2 programs. But I got really comfortable with it, pretty quickly. And the revolution of or the evolution, I think, for years, I remember dreaming about, when I was in my recording studios and stuff, thinking, gosh, if there's only a way you could see the sound, and then you could grab it and then move it, and do stuff with it.
Well, and Pro Tools, at least today, you could do that.
Right. And that was
waveform.
That was the whole thing. It was like, wow. And I mean, when you edited on tape, there was no undo button.
Right.
Or when you punched in on
you punched in for good. Yeah.
That was it, So that was a big change. And not to mention just the actual physical part of it of a 2-inch tape reel for 24 tracks probably weighs, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 pounds, I imagine.
Yeah. But it said the case that came to me that had 6 or 7 Ampex tapes, and it was 70 pounds. So
yeah, and the idea that you didn't have to lug these tapes around anymore, and it was all just there on the computer. It was, it was a game changer. So, so I stuck around ABC for a couple of years, and then I was thinking, well, this is, it's kind of lame. I was thinking, well, if I'm going to do this, I'd rather be doing something, like doing working on movies, or doing something more, interesting. And so at the time, in order to do that, still it's true to a degree, you had to be in the union. And so to get into the union, you have to submit, like, what are your credits and what have you done and blah, 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 blah. And so it took me.
I just went through that. I'm going to be a voting member of the Grammys, and I had to do something very similar.
Yeah. So it took me a year to get into the union. It was like, back and forth. They would come back with more questions and stuff. And then one day they called me up and said, okay, bring $4,000 to the union office tomorrow and you're in.
Extortion.
And, and so I did. And then, I don't know, a couple of days later, I got a call. I had been, there's a company called Avid, and they made a version of a digital audio workstation called AudioVision, which was kind of their version.
Am I wrong? Is Avid own Pro Tools?
Yes, now Avid does own Pro Tools.
Yeah, I thought so.
They didn't then. And what they, so they had come up with their own version of kind of Pro Tools, and it was really designed for post-production. And it was great. It was really, really ideal for post-production. It was really made for that. And I heard about it, and because Avid was over in Burbank, I went over to over there, and wanted to take a look at it, and then one thing led to another, and I became a beta tester for them. And so, a couple of days a week, I would stop by there and spend a few hours, running the program, and until it crashed, and write down what happened before it crashed, and so I got pretty good at audio vision, and so when I got when I got into the union, I had that as one of my skills, is being able to use audio vision, and that's how I got my first gig. Doing working in film, is because they saw I knew the audio vision, and they needed somebody to run to run it, and yeah, and then one thing led to another, and then all of a sudden I got a call from Paramount, or actually I was recommended, somebody at Avid recommended me to Paramount,
Mhm.
and
So what year did you start at Paramount?
this would be 95, I guess.
Yeah, well,
95.
that was a long run, and
Yeah.
boy, things
94,
changed.
95. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But one of the famous stories I always tell was that when I was being given a tour of the facility by the manager of the thing, he said, we have over a terabyte of storage here. 1 terabyte. you know, uh,
Yeah, I mean,
things have changed a bit since then.
just a bit. I've got
Yeah,
a little drive hanging at my computer that's 4 terabytes, and it's
right, right. Yeah, there was
it's nothing.
something called storage things that we used to have that called RMAGs, and they were, I don't know, pretty good size. And once again, probably, maybe at least 10 pounds, and you would slide them into the slot, and they would hold three gigabytes of storage.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So, 31 years behind the soundtrack of Hollywood. So, how does a songwriter end up at Paramount Pictures for 31 years? I mean, you've kind of told the story, but um, so Paramount reached out to you because you were in
Yeah,
the
well,
union or what?
yeah, well, I was on the list of of people that because they have to hire people in the in the from the union, um, and I so the area that I got into, or the area that I was asked to be a part of, was uh, basically a marketing division, which was they have their own little marketing department there that makes the trailers and the commercials for Paramount Motion Pictures.
Hmm.
And and it was interesting because I got to do lots and lots and lots of spots for lots of different movies. Um, and at the time, we also had a little vocal booth there, and occasionally, so they would maybe have to have an actor come in to re-record a line from the movie, or record something that was not in the movie, but they wanted the character to say something that was uh, for a commercial or something like that. So I got to work with some interesting, meet some famous movie star people and stuff. Um, but I mean, to be honest, I thought, well, I'll just work here in this department for a few years, and then I'll try to switch over and to really do it, because I just wanted to work on movies.
Hmm.
And but it's time flies, and I had a young family, two small children, and a wife, and things, and
Tell me about your two small. Evelyn is one of them, right?
Eleanor, Eleanor,
Eleanor, right, in the
yeah,
picture right here.
yeah,
Right here.
yeah.
How old is Eleanor now?
Eleanor is, oh God, put me on the spot. I think she's 36, and my son,
Whoa.
yeah, my son is 35, and
Whoa.
Eleanor lives in Austin. And she was a ballerina for many years. I mean, she did it all the way up into her mid 20s. Um,
Yeah, did she uh any of the LA Dorothy Chandler kind of thing?
she was in companies all around the country, different companies, and so pretty much from the time she was 14 years old, she wasn't at home. She was, I mean, first she was in Boca Raton, Florida, and she was in, Boston, and then she was in Minneapolis, and it's, as I'm sure it's a really tough life. It's a not, I mean,
No, actually, I don't
great,
know, and I don't
yeah.
have any children, so
Well, I mean, being a, a, a ballerina is like
a
being an
professional
elite.
ballerina
It's like
in
being
certain.
an athlete, really, and and also, but I mean, it's different than being an athlete because it's not, unless you're in the upper crust, it's not very well paid. It's um, and she, but the great thing was that it teaches self discipline, and she really, I mean, she, they talk about that whole 10,000 hour rule, how long it takes to master something,
Yep, yep.
and she definitely did that. And so when she decided to um, stop being a ballerina, I was concerned because I thought, well, that's going to be hard to, kind of something that's been part of your, big part of her most of her life. I was concerned that she was going to have trouble, transitioning, but she did great. I mean, she sells real estate in Austin.
Wow.
She's got a bunch of properties. She's got a whole bunch of really great friends, and I'm really proud of her.
All
So
right.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
we have been talking for over an hour.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
we didn't get in our second break, darn it, because I wanted to play as much of your music as I could.
Uh-huh.
But um, let's let's go real quick. What does retirement feel like to someone who has always created?
It's funny because it's not. I really don't feel retired because I'm still working. I mean, I'm right now I'm producing a couple of albums, one for a rock band and one for a singer-songwriter, and I I've stayed pretty disciplined and try to work every day on getting this stuff done. Um, I I retired in March, so it's still pretty soon,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm hoping to. I mean, on the agenda is at some point this year to actually take a real vacation, which is something I really need.
Where do you
Um,
want to go?
uh, Actually, we're thinking about going to doing a Tahiti run.
Ah,
Yeah, just I need some
tropical,
I need some
tropical
time on a
paradise.
beach. Need some time on a beach, and Sarah's my wife speaks fluent French, so that'll come in handy. Um, but it's I part of the reason that I left Paramount because I had kind of planned to work for a couple more years, but the new regime that came in was basically said, um, okay, we want everybody back in the office 5 days a week,
Oh,
and
so you were remote for a while?
I've been working remotely. I've been working because I built a studio at home, and then when the pandemic hit, I said to my bosses, hey, by the way, I've got a studio at home, and they're like, oh, great. And so I started working like the week after they shut down everything. I was working because I had my studio up and running,
Hmm.
and so I've been I would occasionally go into Paramount for a thing, but basically working from home. And when the new regime came in and said we want everybody back in the office 5 days a week, I went to my bosses. I said, look, I did that commute for 26 years, and I've been working successfully from home for all this time.
And I ain't coming back.
I can't do this. And they said, I think they understood that it was not it was out of their control. It was really this is coming from the top dog, and so it was like okay, fine. And I have to say that's the one slight difference in terms of uh, my mental health is a bit better now because I don't have because the marketing for movies is a really high pressure gig, and it's like the hours are insanely long and crazy, and there's changes and stuff, and it's, I mean, it's good. I mean, my chops, so to speak, are really good, but it does wear on you, and it's I'm kind of glad to have that extra stress out of my life. So.
Well, Britt, final part of the show today is I hope to hear somebody honestly trying to connect, and I would love to have you back on the show because we have tons to talk about still. And,
well, thank you, Gary.
You were a real pleasure, my man.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure. Really nice. Good to see you too.
So, everybody, check the description below for Britt's blog post and any other links he may share with me. And we will see you next time, everybody. So, bye-bye.